gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I am Rob, also known as Omnisci, and sometimes the Dungeon Tutor, but today is day 2 of RPGaDay 2022, and that means that we have the second question from the list, which you'll see in the graphic at the beginning of this video, for the day 2, which is, what is a great introductory RPG? Role-playing game. Excellent. Well, there are quite a few, actually. I mean, for the most part, if you're interested in almost any game, most of them these days come with some sort of quick start rules. I've got boxes back here of starter sets, which can be a great way of getting into a game. They're usually less expensive than buying all the books for a game, often come with a set of dice or tokens, various things that can get you started. But that's not really what I think of when I think of a starter role-playing game. When I think of starter role-playing game, I mean the game that you play to bring you in, that you can get excited about the game because you can learn it easily, come to grips with it, and it's got a concept that's not too high and out there and hard to get into. And for many people, getting into role-playing games involves playing with other people and them kind of dragging you into their game, whatever it is, teaching you the rules, hopefully gently, so that you have time to catch up and understand everything. But ultimately, it becomes an exercise in learning what is oftentimes a fairly advanced set of rules and systems and things like that. And that can be a little little trying. No, I think a great introductory RPG is something that starts off with the simplest of concepts. Teaches you them, that you can rely on them, use them again and again, get a taste for them, get a kind of understanding. If I do this, this means this. It's a little bit like learning how to walk. You know, once you start getting the parts under you that will move you and learning how to, get all the joints moving and everything, the very basic steps of a role-playing game is much like that. If you learn, for instance, the combat routines, because many role-playing games involve combat, knowing how to make an attack on an opponent, what kinds of attacks you can make, to what benefit does attacking an opponent mean, or maybe defending yourself becomes more important. Those are all things that you can learn in a game, and it's one of the first things that most people want to learn are the simple mechanics, and then move up from there. There are some games that really do a fantastic job. The one that I'm going to recommend today has the advantage that it's completely free. That's right, you can download this for free right now. And I have the advantage, and you may say this comes with a bit of bias, but I am friends with the person who wrote it. I have a great deal of respect for him, and I have no problem plugging his product because I think it's an excellent product. The game I'm talking about is called Swords and Wizardry Light. This game is a love letter to the early days of Dungeons & Dragons. It simplifies the core mechanics, so it's something of a retro clone of the earliest versions of Dungeons & Dragons. Before all of the complicated dice enter into it, before a massive range of options enters into it at all, this is designed to be very beginner-friendly and very easy to pick up and use. So, why do I recommend this? Again, free! This is a free product. Yes, you don't get the funny, glossy, version that I have. This isn't even my autographed copy, but the person who made this, Eric Tenkar-Stina, great guy. One of the great watchdogs of the gaming hobby. He has his own blog called Tenkar's Tavern. Don't mind throwing a pitch out to him every now and then either, not that he needs me. But this game will teach you basic role-playing mechanics. It'll teach you how to make a character very simply, without a lot of complicated options or anything like that. When you're done, in the 3 or 4 minutes that it takes to make a character, you have something that you can then immediately take on the dungeon. Whoever is running the game has the same tools that they need to run it. The monsters and the mechanics are on the inside of this, which makes this basically a screen. You can set this up and everything you need is on the back side for you as the game master, and everything the players need is on the front side so that they can read off of whatever they need. Assuming the table's small enough, of course. But it's designed really well to work well in that kind of a space. And again, for somebody just getting into running these games, well, it's got a small list of monsters, the more popular rogues gallery of monsters that you could get. By the way, this game is made by Frog God Games, so again, I've had very good success with games that I've gotten from them, so again, they make good stuff. So, the complicated thing about playing Dungeons and Dragons, this takes all the complexity out of it. All the different weapons. The weapons do just about the same damage. You all roll a 1 6-sided die, and then you maybe make +1 for a big weapon, -1 for a little weapon. That's it. You can have 4 classes. They've got 4 different classes in this game. So you can play as a fighter, you can play as a cleric, you can play as a thief, or you can play as a magic user. And again, all of those classes, all the rules fit in little blocks on one side of this. You're not buried under a lot of details. But it does give you the flavor of playing in the most popular role-playing games in the world right now. Fantasy role-playing games still take up a shockingly large amount of the games that people play, and this is a great primer for that. Now, on top of that, let me just show you the character sheet real quick. This is the character sheet. You might imagine that this doesn't take a lot of time to fill out. You'd be right. You have to roll for your stats, just like most games of Dungeons and Dragons. Or again, you can pre-generate those. Your game master might give you the numbers, and you can slot them wherever you want, and you will learn what the statistics are. Don't worry if you didn't roll really high. There's not a lot of downside to not having a great stat, but it may help you to role play. Playing a character with a low charisma, maybe you're boorish, maybe you're... all those things that we learn about role-playing games, you can do with this just as well. And then your name, your race, and there's just box to tick off. That's it, just a box to tick off. You're good. What's in your adventure pack? There's 2 different options, so you don't have to look at a list of all the stuff. Just pick 1 or pick 2, and you're done. Boom. Whatever your weapon is, whatever your armor is, that can be filled in very quickly. Your hit points, your gold, and the number of adventures you've been on that determines what effective level you are. Items that you carry, spells that you may know, notice very small, and this is designed to get you a character that can go up to 1st level, 2nd level, and then 3rd level on one sheet. Now, if you get through that, you decide that's great, I want to take my adventures a step further. Well, they came out with Continual Light. And this expands the options. If the players have learned everything from Continual Light, they're ready to move on to something a little bit more complicated. It's still not the full retro clone that Swords and Wizardry is. This is still a miniaturized version, but it does show you some of the options of multiple classes. So you can take your brand new shiny 3rd level character from Light and put them into Continual Light, and maybe you choose a different character class that's related to the character you chose. Maybe instead of a fighter, you want to be a ranger. Then you just look the options up in here. And again, this was GameholeCon 2017. Got Eric to sign that. Very proud. He also had a part in this, which is awesome. And this is a particular style that it's written in, considered the old school role-playing game style. So, characters are quick and easy. You get right into the adventure, and you can learn all the concepts about role-playing very quickly and easily. They're written in a common sense way that anybody can pick up and start to understand what eventually comes to be a lot of complicated concepts at the highest end. And this will take you up to about 9th, 10th level, I think. If you decide, okay, I'm now ready for more than this, then you can go to the full Swords and Wizardry. And this is the full thing. 1 book, that's it. Does not need to be 3 separate books. This has everything you need in 1 book to run Swords and Wizardry. Use any of their adventure modules. You can even convert adventures from other games and play off of this if you wanted to. And this is a lot cheaper than going out and buying 3 $50 books. So, again, I think this is a great introductory to role-playing because it's scalable, it's cheap to start, and it's fast and easy to get anyone with a scrap of imagination ready to play. And you can approach it at whatever level you want. If you want to throw in a lot of role-playing, feel free. There's nothing in here that's stopping you from role-playing, and nothing that's really going to make you need to be spoon-fed. And roll a die here at this point. Roll a die here. You roll this to check this skill. The Game Master handles all of that. So it generally tends to be very engaging between you and the Game Master all the time, which is kind of how a lot of role-playing games work, or some of them should work. So, yes, this is, I find, a great way to get people into role-playing games. And honestly, a look back at the earliest, the history of gaming, if somebody starts at that level, then by the time they've played this for a few sessions, they've learned the core mechanics, they learned how to attack, they've learned what an armor class is, then they're ready to go to any edition of Dungeons & Dragons, really. Yeah, there will be some changes, certainly. There will be some considerable changes for some of the games. But you'll have the basics down, and I think that's important, because then the shock gets much, much less. And you'll already have learned some of the more important lessons. When I introduced my group to a variety of different role-playing games, one of the ones I did was one of the early forms of Dungeons & Dragons. Why? Because I thought it was important that they get a taste of what it's like when your character isn't the destined hero of some grand divine scheme with an overarching storyline. Their adventurers trying to make their way in a world that does not care if they live or die, and it's up to them to make their own fortune. If they make a mistake, they can die very quickly and very brutally. But if they do, another character is just a couple of dice rolls away and you're ready to play again. So it teaches a style and introduces all of these concepts, which I think is pretty awesome. So that would be my pick for an introductory RPG. And, you know, different people have different tastes, of course. But since many people start with fantasy role-playing, if I was going to say, somebody came up to me and said, hey, I want to teach my 6-year-old or my 7-year-old how to play a role-playing game, I wouldn't go and steer them right away to 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Simplified as that is over some versions of D&D, I would probably steer them to download Swords and Wizardry Lite, have a crack at teaching some of those early lessons about the different classes and what makes one kind of cool and maybe fit your style without overwhelming them. And with meaningful choices that you can make and all the adventure and experience that your game master can come up with, you can have a great experience. Every bit as valid as any other role-playing game. You don't lose out for playing simple sometimes. And this is a fine game that anybody can start with. And then, after you've mastered Swords and Wizardry Lite, maybe Swords and Wizardry Continual Lite, then you can look on to some other games. Then you can really feel like you understand the give and take of gaming and those core concepts. So that's why I picked this game. Perhaps, if I'm talking to other gamers out there, maybe you have your own game that you started with and have great memories of, or can appreciate how trying to learn from one game or another was a bit harder. You know, I learned off of basic Dungeons & Dragons back in the day, and I thought that game was written extremely well with a lot of good points on how to run the games. That would definitely be my number 2, would be the old Red Box Dungeons & Dragons 2, because I thought it was written extraordinarily well for somebody just coming in from the outside. But these days, honestly, considering you need nothing other than a 20-sided die and a 6-sided die, and everything is right there for you to play, yeah, we'll go with Swords and Wizardry these days. So, that's my pick. And hopefully you find this to have kind of engaged you, maybe think about what you think was the most user-friendly game that you ever had found to possibly bring other people into the game too. So, by all means, leave anything in the comments that you have on this subject. I'd love to hear it. If you want to make a video yourself and feel like linking it to this video, I would love to see it. And I am, of course, Rob Omnisci, your online dungeon master, and the Dungeon Tutor. all happy to make these videos for you and hopefully entertain you, buoy your spirits, and maybe introduce you to a new game that you didn't know about. So until next time, thank you and farewell.